Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel, everyone. Is Donald Trump a coward? Pete Hegseth. Did they run away? Imagine if Air Force One had blown up. The Air Force One with all the media and some of the others from Trump's inner circle on board, while the president was riding on the alternate plane. He used the media and others from his entourage, his little group that flies around with him, used him as decoys. So that's the way some people are framing it. Some media outlets tonight, controversial story, calling Trump's character into question. Does he have any backbone? Does he care about other people? Well, we'll explore that a little bit tonight. That's our top story on the thumbnail and headline on most of the social media platforms we're broadcasting to tonight. We have other stories to cover too, though. We will be, of course, looking at what's going on with the war with Iran, and it is a war, which of course ties into everything that we just mentioned here. And we'll also be looking at the issue of socialized healthcare, communism. These are issues that will be brought up as signature issues, I think, in the march toward the midterms, and the rhetoric ramps up on both sides. But on the MAGA side, yeah, I think that they're going to be using the fake threat of communism as a focal point, a main plank in their platform. Anyway, stay with me. We've got a lot of stuff to unpack tonight. And I might even talk a little bit about the abortion issue, which, of course, will get everybody upset. I'll be right back.
Maverick News. The new wave in news. Donate at maverickthenations.com.
And we're back. So fresh details continue to emerge about President Trump's elaborate and secret planes, which last month, after that NATO summit in Turkey, U.S. officials say a credible Iranian threat, intelligence pointing to a possible surface-to-air shoulder-fired missile attack on Air Force One, prompted an extraordinary security operation. That was the threat. Some indications that warning, the intelligence on that came from Israel, and some wondering if the intelligence was really of real value, or if it was maybe some sort of a strategic maneuver by the Israelis to scare or manipulate Trump as they try to continue to be the tail wagging the dog on the whole Iran war. So this whole thing is resulting, President Trump, of course, secretly moved off that Air Force One plane in Turkey last month and then switched to this other plane. He left the media as sort of a decoy on the other one, and the reporters were not informed. So he's been questioned about it. We'll frame this, and you'll see in the background there, or on the left, the catering truck on the far side of Air Force One. And what they did is they had the president get on this plane, then using a door on the other side, they exited the plane and got on in the catering truck, Trump and a couple of others, including Pete Hegseth. And they scurried off to the alternate aircraft. This, of course, was the big plane from Qatar that was gifted to President Trump and is maybe going to end up in his eventual presidential library.
Can you tell us about your ride on the airport catering truck in Turkey? Why did you need to do that?
Well, it's only up to Secret Service. I just follow what they'd like to do. So I go by Secret Service and the military. They wanted me to go on a different flight, a different plane, equal safety, but they wanted me to do it, so I do it. I do what they say.
What is the nature of the threat?
I guess there was a threat out there. I didn't really ask too much about it. I get a lot of threats.
Why was it too dangerous for you to fly on Air Force One, but
Well,
not
I don't
too
know.
dangerous
I
for the
think
press?
actually the plane that I flew on was at greater risk.
Why
I think
do you
it was
say
at
that?
greater risk because that would be the plane I think that they would be more likely to go for.
Can you tell us about your ride on the airport catering truck in Turkey? Why?
Well, of course, he's going to frame it that way, but the reality is they took him off that plane because they said, well, we want you over there because that'll be safer for you. They didn't put him on the plane that was going to be more likely to be targeted. They took him off the first plane to put him on the other plane because it was supposed to be safer. But of course, he's going to spin it that way. Joe Rogan making headlines with his reaction to all this. He says, well, some people are saying he was, and this is the word that I've seen used online, gobsmacked over the whole thing. Here, we'll run the clip. I hate running this stuff because I just hope that we don't get a strike on this. It's for educational purposes only. I do not own the copyright, and I'm just trying to highlight the clip.
Apparently, there was this plot where Iran was trying to kill Trump. Remember when he was supposed to get in the Air Force One that Qatar gave him?
Mm-hmm.
And then instead he flew in the old Air Force One?
Okay.
Well, they're saying that he actually didn't even go in the old Air Force One, that they snuck him out on a truck.
Okay.
Like some fucking cargo truck.
Okay.
And then put him in another kind of plane and flew him out of there. And then they put the press in Air Force One because they were apparently worried they were going to target Air Force One as well. So imagine Trump put the press on Air Force One and they were thinking about possibly targeting them.
Holy shit.
He hid in an airport catering container and was taken to a military jet for a secret flight out of the country after the NATO summit last month. And this is being reported by the New York Times. The thing is, though, I think they put the press on Air Force One. So if they flew him out, it was because they were worried they were going to try to take down Air Force One. And they took the press.
If you take the press off, then they know that we know. Gotta let them know that
You're right,
we're
Jamie.
not playing games. It's just everything's normal.
Exactly. And if the press dies, so sad.
Oh my!
But you just get more press.
God, that's fucking wild.
If that's true, that is so wild that he didn't even tell them, hey guys, we're not really going to get on this plane. No one's getting on this plane. You guys get out of here. Go take American Airlines home. No. He's like, hop on. It's safe.
Yeah.
It's Air Force One.
Guys, my gift to you, take Air Force One. Enjoy it. There's food up, there's sandwiches on there. Enjoy yourself.
Is that absolutely what happened?
It says reporters on the older plane were not told that Mr. Trump had not flown with them from Turkey to an airbase in Britain, making them unwitting participants in the ruse and leaving them, along with some White House staff members, to serve as unknowing decoys.
Holy shit.
After they arrived in Britain, he was secretly moved back to the older version of Air Force One.
Bro.
Jesus Christ.
Those press people were signing up for something they didn't know. They didn't know what they were signing up for. And they didn't tell them at all that when you want to know like who's more important, you were the president, that's when you find out.
Oh,
When
yeah.
They just throw you on Air Force One. Shrimp cocktail.
It's like
Boom! All of a sudden, you turn into fucking protons.
It's like fucking Goodfellas when he's telling Karen to go
Yeah.
go down and get the dresses.
Go ahead.
There's
ahead.
dresses.
No, I'm okay. Karen,
Holy
why?
shit!
Yeah, but it's not really funny. It isn't really funny at all. If you're a true leader, do you just run away, hop on some other flight, and leave other people in harm's way, potentially, knowing that there's a clear and credible threat to their safety? Maybe that the plane might be targeted, blown up with a missile? Some sort of anti-aircraft device? A rocket launcher? What kind of person does that? Oh, okay, yeah, well, just let them go. Well, and of course, that's exactly what they were doing. They left the media and some others on that plane. They didn't have them disembark because they wanted it to look like everything was just honky-dory, everything was normal, that they were unaware of any kind of a threat if they were being monitored, to get the president out of there, and then had the plane take off. And if it had been a real threat, maybe it was, and for whatever reason, the attack didn't happen. But if it had, the president would have been on another plane, safe, and those people would all be dead. Seems to me that if you're a real leader, somebody tells you to get off that plane, you say, well, wait a minute, what about the rest of the people? You'd want other people taken care of too, and then you would say, I certainly would. Well, then nobody goes anywhere. Wouldn't that make more sense? Wouldn't that be the right thing to do, rather than let other people take off and use them as a decoy, a fake target? That's pretty gross. And really, it first thought, you might laugh about it, but it isn't funny at all. It isn't funny. It's actually really disgusting. I'm surprised people aren't making more of an issue out of it. Maybe Trump wasn't fully informed, but he's the commander in chief. I'd be asking questions if they had me get off that plane. If I were in his shoes, not that I could ever be the president anyway, but if you're told get off the plane right now, come on down here, we're going to get you out this back door. Now come down these stairs. Okay, now get in this catering truck. And you'd be like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. Obviously, there's a threat of some kind, right? And how serious was the threat? Well, at least two actual attempts to take Trump out, to kill him. Actually, more than that, more assassination attempts. But they've had shots fired at him, or so the story goes. The Iranians using this for political ammunition, mocking him online with videos like this.
Very secure, and the cake is tremendous. Sir, you have to pedal. I am pedaling tremendously. Air Force One had less legroom. This is actually better than the Qatari plane. Sir, Washington is 4,000 miles away. Making excellent time. Sir, how was the flight? Uneventful.
And this is Iranian propaganda. You might not realize that that's what it is, but it is, and these things are going viral. Tonight, here's another one. I'm going to turn the audio down. Here we go.
Cater Force One. Big speech, big jet. Cameras got the shot. Cater Force One. Cater Force One. Air Force for the cameras. Food truck for the run. Cater Force One. Cater Force One. Talk like a king till the warning came through. Front door swagger, back door flight. Press on the decoy with the window shades tight. Cater Force One. Cater Force One. Whole tough guy image came undone. Boarded Air Force One for the big photo op. Wave like a king, then he made the swap. Catering truck lifted him up real clean. Drove him across the tarmac like a meal on the scene. C-32A waiting in the dark while the decoy plane took the press on the arc. They thought he was with them. Shades pulled tight, but the boss was already gone into the night. One plane for the picture, one plane for the flight, one story for the public, one escape in the night. Cater Force One. Cater Force One. Air Force for the cameras. Food truck for the run. Cater Force One. Cater Force One. All that tough talk till the warning came through. Front door swagger, back door flight. Decoy in the air while you slipped out of sight. Cater Force One. Cater Force One. I ran, changed the rap before the night was done. Secret defense. Air Force One for the image. Cater Force One for the exit. Secret defense.
Yeah, it's propaganda. But sometimes there's truth in it. Sometimes there's absolute truth. All right. Enough of this. We've got other stuff sort of tied to it, related, and we'll start digging into that when we come back on the other side of this.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, 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 blah.
Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. blah blah.
Maverick News. No blah, blah, blah.
Okay. Just in within the last 20 minutes, Canada's trade team negotiators meeting again with their U.S. counterparts as some sort of resolution to the Trump tariff war is sought. So Dominic LeBlanc from Canada posting on his social media platforms just moments ago. Let's bring it up here. Is that it? There we go. Yeah, Dominic LeBlanc. I met my counterpart, Jameson Greer, the U.S. trade representative, this afternoon in Washington alongside Canada's chief trade negotiator. This marks our fourth meeting over the past 3 weeks. Negotiations are ongoing, and we continue to put Canada's interests front and center. That's it. Scroll down, and it says, if President Trump rejects Canada's proposal, then Canadians should be told what was actually put on the table. If Canada made a fair and credible offer, let Canadians and Americans judge for themselves where the obstacle lies. Yeah, I guess. Well, we'll see. I think that a lot of this is theater. That's just my assessment. Obviously, high stakes, real issues, some real, like genuine issues there, but a lot of this stuff is smoke and mirrors. The U.S. side demanding concessions on Canadian tariffs on specifically automobiles and dairy, and they want the booze bans lifted, and it appears Canada is willing to flex to some degree on this stuff. The dairy stuff, Carney has said that the government of Canada remains committed to supply management, which means they're committed to keeping some sort of tariff in place and limited access to the Canadian market by U.S. dairy producers, big American agribusiness. However, these other issues are really kind of non-issues in my view, because these are tariffs imposed by Canada in response to Trump's tariff war. So when Trump is saying he wants relief from, or the Trump team saying they want relief from like the tariffs on automobiles from Canada, well, those are targeted and a response to the Trump tariff war. Those tariffs were never in place to begin with. So what's really happened is that in a number of cases where these key concessions being sought are being identified, the concessions wouldn't even be required if Trump hadn't created a problem to begin with. And so in the end, the concessions that he gets are not really gaining the U.S. side anything at all. It's really a march back toward where we were with the Kuzma deal to begin with, which was a deal that Trump, when he negotiated it during Trump 1.0, came away from that as saying that it was the best trade deal ever. Now says that it's no good. And you know the whole story by now. So with that being said, again, I think a lot of it is just a lot of theater. And then in the end, by creating the crisis and then coming up with a so-called solution to the whole thing, which really just gets us back pretty close to where we started from anyway. It's just a big exercise it's just a show. It's just a big freaking show. Unless, of course, he gets really serious and decides to ramp up the economic warfare on Canada because he has other motives. And that might well be the case too. And I don't think the deal is worth anything anyway, because the Kuzma didn't save Canada from anything. It just plunged us into this economic chaos now because Trump hasn't honored the deal, and in fact is in violation of it, which is a problem, to say the least. Anyway, I lost my tabs here. Okay, they cut our feed there again. So what I am going to do is take a break while all the tabs repopulate, and I'll get things reconfigured, and we'll come back on the other side of this and resume the broadcast. My apologies if somebody doesn't like us talking to you. Would they call that censorship? Or no, you know what it is? We're just the most feared live stream podcast, broadcast, news program on the internet. Somebody's afraid of us.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, we're still working on getting things coordinated here again. However, what we can tell you is the situation aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, that nuclear-powered aircraft carrier that is supporting U.S. operations in the Middle East. Not good. It has endured one of the longest continuous deployments in modern naval history. It has prompted reports of severe mental health strain, including multiple attempts by sailors to jump overboard. I became aware of this story several days ago. I didn't report on it. I thought, no, it can't be true. And in this age of can't tell what's real and what's fake, this was a story that I thought it's got to be an exaggeration, but apparently not. The Abraham Lincoln has about 5,000 sailors and Marines aboard. It left San Diego in November of last year. It was supposed to be a Pacific deployment, expecting to end around May, and the carrier was redirected to the Middle East because of the conflict with Iran, and has now been at sea for more than about 9 months. And officials and family members say the crew has logged about 250 consecutive days underway without a meaningful port call, a modern record for an aircraft carrier. Brief stops in Guam and then Oman allowed limited or restricted shore access for many. I had some stuff queued up here that I was going to share with you. Let me see if I can retrieve it for you. Yeah, here we go. So the story now, like originally it was being picked up more by independent media, as some of the families were getting their messages out. They're their concerns, and now legacy media also picking up on it. Here's CBS with their take. Let me share it with you tonight. I guess all kinds of problems, everything from, not enough food, even issues with water on board, and showers, filthy showers that might sound. I did make an inquiry to some people who were able to verify some things for me, and I guess the showers are filthy dirty on the aircraft carrier as well. And you might say, well, just clean the showers, but because they've got manpower shortages, staffing issues, they're having trouble even finding time to clean the showers. Anyway, it sounds like small things, but over time it isn't. It's a major deal, I guess, and it's affecting the mental health of the crew.
President Trump and like-minded Republicans don't like to call the war with Iran what it is, a war. They prefer silly euphemisms like excursion or skirmish. Funny. I can't remember Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth ever referring to excursion fighters or skirmish fighters. Nope. He calls his charges war fighters. And what's going on with Iran, it's a war. Tens of thousands of U.S. military personnel on land and at sea have been at war since February 28th. 18 Americans have so far died in that war, and at least 450 have been wounded, though the number of wounded could be higher because of delays in Pentagon reporting and disputes over injury classifications. These are the most visible effects of war, death and injury. There are numerous other effects. Higher tempo of operations, stress on weaponry and personnel, fatigue and isolation. These pains are especially prevalent for sailors and Marines on long sea deployments. The bigger the vessel, the greater number and intensity of stressors. Which brings us to the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln. Its crew of about 5,000 sailors and Marines deployed from San Diego November 21st. That deployment was supposed to end in May. It has been repeatedly extended with no date set for return to port. The Military Times and the Navy Times have reported cases of sailors either going overboard or attempting to do so. There are also reports of maintenance issues and food shortages. Today, Hegseth said those reports were exaggerated. Even so, word came today that the USS George Washington will relieve the Lincoln. When, though, that remains unclear. War this is. All U.S. personnel in the region know it. They are living the risks as operational pressures and demands increase. And we're going to pick it up there with our senior national security correspondent, Charlie Daggett, who's with me here at the family table. Charlie, take it from
Okay, enough. So it's still going to be a while before those guys get home. And yeah, they're under a lot of stress on that ship, in need of repair and maintenance. I just, you got to feel for them, and makes you wonder, did they even have a plan? No, they didn't. when they went in, this is more evidence of that. This is not going well. And it's a lot of it isn't just about not having a proper plan. It's about being led by somebody who I think maybe has a bad attitude, who likes to do bad things to bad people, just likes to do bad things. The language here I find distressing. That's me. Maybe you like this kind of stuff, but war is not a game. It's very serious business. And when you see somebody enjoying it, then there's a problem.
That's why today we launched the motto of the ACCC, which is we do bad things to bad people. Because for too long, bad people did bad things to good people inside the United States of America and across Central and South America. And we're going to empower great Americans and great partners to do really good stuff and be very capable about bringing violence against drug cartels and designated terrorist organizations, because we're dead serious about securing the homeland. We're dead serious about the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, which is not just talk. It's not just a policy extension of Teddy Roosevelt. It is a recognition that DTOs, foreign terrorist organizations, will not control our hemisphere with our partners, and we will not allow foreign malign influence to take over, say, key terrain like the Panama Canal. That's why, we launched the...
We do bad things to bad people. And who decides who's bad and who's good? I guess he does. And because of the Donroe Doctrine, they can just do whatever they want to anybody they want to do it to, as they do the bad things to the bad people. Yeah, right on. Right out of Central Casting.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So, military publications, including the Navy Times, Stars and Stripes, along with subsequent reporting by outlets, including The Guardian, CNN, others you saw, CBS, they're detailing accounts, Globe and Mail in Canada, detailing accounts from family members describing family members of crew aboard the Lincoln, describing exhaustion, declining morale, supply shortages, and suicide attempts. Some spouses reporting that their husbands either attempted to jump or intervene to stop shipmates from doing so. One sailor's wife saying that her husband, after repeated deployment extensions, tried to go overboard and is now on medical hold, expressing fear that the incident could end his 13-year career. Another describes her husband pulling a fellow crew member back from the edge of the deck. Something's not right, obviously. U.S. officials have confirmed to multiple outlets that earlier this month, a sailor did actually go overboard. That individual was recovered by helicopter, took about an hour, was recovered within the hour, received medical treatment aboard the ship, then was transferred off to receive more care. The Navy characterizing that episode as a mental health incident, which is under investigation. Officials have said that they have not identified a broader increase in reported suicidal ideation or attempts on the ship, while emphasizing that the health and well-being of the crew remains a priority. But with these reports, it's fairly clear that they do have a larger problem, that there does seem to be more of this going on than normal. And supply challenges have been attributed in part to disruptions caused by combat operations, obviously. And then Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, Secretary of War, described some media accounts of conditions aboard the Lincoln as completely misrepresented. Well, I didn't want to do that. That's why when I became aware of this story several days ago, I didn't touch it. I waited. It's always, nice to be first, but it's more important to be accurate. So with confirmation tonight that these stories are not just credible, but are actually accurate, I bring the information to you tonight. Families voicing strong concerns in meetings with Navy leadership, including now the acting Secretary of the Navy, citing such issues as limited fresh food, laundry outages, plumbing problems, and the psychological toll of the open-ended mission. And lawmakers are pressing the Navy for answers on living conditions and mental health support. This might end up being an issue during the midterms as part of the larger Iran disaster. The Navy has indicated that the Theodore Roosevelt is being prepared to relieve the Abraham Lincoln, though no timeline really has been confirmed for this, but it looks like the Lincoln will probably need to remain on scene for at least several more weeks. So this just amplifies and underscores the human cost of this extended combat operation far from home ports. And as of tonight, the grinding conflict between the United States and Iran. Hard to believe that this is now in its 6th month. Still no sign of resolution, with both sides just hardening their positions over the past even 24 hours. Hegseth saying the American naval blockade of Iranian ports can be sustained, his word here, indefinitely. I doubt that. Well, maybe, I suppose. Hegseth says that the ships can be rotated in and out of the region as needed. That's how they would do it, of course, but they can't just maintain the war at the level that it was before. In fact, you've seen in the last 2 weeks, even the rhetoric about escalating the U.S. attacks on Iran have really not been there anymore. The strongman threats coming from Trump have really evaporated and have now shifted toward economic warfare, saying that eventually Iran's economy will collapse. And that seems to be the new strategy, at least in terms of rhetoric. And we'll have to wait and see. But so far, that has not happened. And I can tell you, too, that you want to talk about digital currency. That is how Iran has been surviving through all of this, even before Trump had decided to take this little excursion, war, to them. Bitcoin, digital currency, that's how they move money around without needing to bend the knee to the financial system that the United States and the Western world basically control. They can hide the funds. So, as Hegseth looks at rotating ships to just maintain this thing, continue it indefinitely, which will, of course, keep him happy because you can see that he is very much, he's very pleased with, I guess, the way things have transpired because he seems to like this kind of stuff, which I think indicates a mental health issue. Frankly, if you're enjoying that, then there's a problem. But you can just see that he's just, enough said. I think you know what I'm saying. The comments about all the ship rotations and talking about maintaining the economic pressure. Well, Trump's talking about all this while he's making these repeated assertions that the U.S. now holds total control of the Strait of Hormuz strategically. And he's describing the whole blockade as a wall of steel that Iran cannot challenge. It makes no sense. It's a blockade on a blockade, as Iran now controls the strait and potentially now with Oman, because they do have the framework for a deal in place and they are working out the details. But now Iran is, pushing back even harder against the United States. And we're seeing all kinds of rhetoric suggesting that they are not even interested in speaking to the Trump administration anymore and are looking ahead to actually potentially continuing this conflict right through until Trump actually leaves office and into whatever administration replaces him and his team. So this is far from over. Iran's foreign minister warning that the United States could be making a big miscalculation about the strait based on what he is calling fake intelligence. And Tehran's Persian Gulf Strait Authority and military spokesman insisting the waterway remains under full Iranian management and will stay closed until Washington accepts Iran's conditions, including an end to the blockade, compensation, and the lifting of sanctions. Reuters reporting that they've been told by an Iranian source tonight that there has been absolutely no progress in mediator-led discussions aimed at reviving the June interim memorandum of understanding that briefly halted major combat operations. And that deal, which set a 60-day window for a permanent settlement, has really just collapsed, with both sides in this thing accusing each other of violations. And then you've got the whole situation with the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Of course, they're aligned with Iran, in case you hadn't noticed. They claimed a drone strike on a Saudi refinery and reported activity in the Bab al-Mandeb Strait. And Iranian officials are still dismissing any notion of imminent U.S. ground operations as illusory. Fake. Maybe. I don't think Trump has I don't think he wants I don't think he'll take that level of risk. He's got a pretty heavy appetite for risk, pretty heavy tolerance for it. But I think he sees that the American people don't want any of it. If he sends troops in there, he's done politically, man. And if he does it before the midterms, oh man, I think that the Republicans will just get trounced. I think they might get trounced anyway, because I think Americans, well, Trump still has a base of support. Largely the polling is showing that Trump is in some pretty serious trouble because he's just lost so much support over this whole situation with Iran. And, the oil markets still sensitive to the whole thing going on over there, this deadlock. Shipping traffic through the strait still heavily restricted. Mediators, including Pakistan and others, continuing quiet efforts to kind of bring the parties back to the table, but Iranian sources just flatly rejecting reports of any agreement to extend the now expired ceasefire framework. And then there's Israel kind of in the background over there, and they clearly are not pleased with Trump either. And there seems to be a wedge that has been driven in between Netanyahu and Trump as a result of all of this stuff, because Netanyahu obviously wants to ramp things up, and Trump is gun shy now because he's just obviously run into trouble. And while he keeps telling everybody that things are just going much better than the media is letting on, it's very clear that he also knows that things are not going well. So, no breakthroughs tonight. Stalemate continues. And we'll be right back.
Someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching. The world is watching. On TV, the entire world is watching. On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
Just to clarify, I may have slipped and said something incorrect. I'm just thinking about it. Just to clarify, it's the George Washington that has been deployed to replace the Abraham Lincoln. Just to make sure that is all straight. I may have said something else. Yeah, the USMCA trade deal. The negotiations ongoing, and it's getting attention on the U.S. side too, because we're only now, well, the deadline is the 19th for the 50% tariffs. It's now the 13th, so we're down to the wire. Last week of negotiations, such as they are, and of course, nobody really knows what's going on. They're not telling us. They're saying they're giving us bits and pieces and spin when they come out, but the reality is we don't really know what's going on behind those closed doors. So that's why I really haven't paid that much attention to it in the past few days. It's something that obviously needs to be covered, but I'm not going to give it too much attention here until we get something a little bit more concrete. So I have taken note, and maybe I've got a clip here to back this up. I've noticed that there's all this, ahead of all the midterms, everything going on, I'm seeing more and more clips coming up in these talk shows, and this is not an accident, but they're talking about the Canadian healthcare system on U.S. media, especially on right-wing magosphere channels. And again, I think maybe I've lost my tab because we got taken down. And I'm putting it back up, though. Let me see if I can find this here. Oh, here, I've got the, also, look, I've got this from, I'll come back to this in a moment. I'll show you this because it's related to the Abraham Lincoln. This is a letter from the acting Secretary of the Navy, Hung Cow. I'm sorry. He's written this letter to Pete Hegseth because the families have actually expressed concerns directly to the acting Secretary of the Navy. He says, I write to express serious concerns about the increasing length of the carrier strike group deployments and request information regarding the deployment of the USS Abraham Lincoln. The Lincoln's extended deployment raises broader questions about the Navy's ability to sustainably generate carrier forces while preserving service member well-being, maintenance schedules, fleet readiness, and the capacity to respond to future contingencies. Since departing Naval Base San Diego on November 21st last year, the USS Abraham Lincoln has been deployed more than 250 days as of this writing, despite initially being scheduled for a 7-month deployment. The flagship of Carrier Strike Group 3 has not made a port call in over 200 days, setting a record for consecutive days at sea. There have been widespread reports of shortages of basic supplies, water contamination, plumbing issues, deteriorating mental health, dock safety concerns, and disruptions in the mail system, which have caused many care packages en route to the ship to be lost in transit for months. These reports warrant immediate attention, but they also raise a broader question: whether the Navy can sustain the operational tempo now being demanded of its carrier force, particularly as this administration repeatedly commits U.S. forces to conflicts of its own choosing and increasingly relies on aircraft carriers to sustain those operations. This does not sound very supportive. This guy is basically one step below Hegseth in terms of rank and power. So the Lincoln, it says here, is not an isolated case. Recent carrier deployments have repeatedly stretched beyond their originally anticipated durations, suggesting that extended deployments may be becoming a feature rather than an exception of the Navy's force generation model. The USS Gerald R. Ford spent 326 days at sea before returning home in May, nearly twice the length of a traditional 6-month carrier deployment and the longest modern U.S. carrier deployment since the Vietnam era. This is a telling letter. This kind of blows the whole thing wide open, doesn't it? The Lincoln's prolonged deployment is especially significant because it is occurring in the context of continuing military operations against Iran and the possibility that substantial U.S. naval forces will be required in the region for an extended period. The administration has yet to adequately explain the objectives and state or anticipated duration of those operations. If the administration intends to maintain a prolonged military campaign or an elevated carrier presence in the region, it must explain how it intends to ensure today's operational requirements do not create tomorrow's readiness crisis. Yeah. Aircraft carriers are extraordinarily dangerous workplaces under normal conditions. Service members work grueling shifts around jet engines, fuel, weapons, heavy machinery, electrical systems, nuclear propulsion, launching and recovering aircraft, all while remaining under the threat of attack by adversaries. Extended periods at sea can compound those inherent risks through fatigue, deferred maintenance, and reduced opportunities for rest and recovery. The Navy must ensure that decisions to extend carrier deployments account not only for immediate operational requirements, but also for their cumulative effects on crew, safety, equipment, readiness, maintenance schedules, and the ability of the carrier force to meet future contingencies. I therefore request that the Department of the Navy provide answers to the following questions by August 27th. Oh, he's got a whole slew of questions here. What is the Navy's plan for sustaining carrier strike group presence in the Middle East over the next 12 to 24 months? If operational requirements continue, what carrier rotations are anticipated? Oh my. This is extensive. What was the USS Abraham Lincoln's originally scheduled deployment length, and on what dates has the deployment subsequently been extended? Please list significant habitability, supply, and quality of life problems identified aboard the Lincoln, including shortages of hygiene products, mold, broken toilets or laundry facilities, inadequate water supplies, or other deteriorating living conditions. When these problems were first identified and the corrective actions that have been taken. What metrics is the Navy using to assess fatigue, morale, mental health, and crew readiness? Does the department assess that the current demand for aircraft carrier presence exceeds the level that can be sustainably generated? What military objective is the continued deployment of the Lincoln intended to achieve in Iran? Well, that would be a great question to have answered. And how does the department assess whether the carrier's continued presence is necessary to accomplish that objective? In other words, what's the end game here? And I don't think they have one. Sixth question, maybe the most important, not just in terms of what's going on with the ship, but the whole darn operation. It says the men and women aboard the Lincoln have answered the call to serve their country. The department owes them not only adequate supplies, maintenance, and support during this deployment, but a sustainable force generation model that does not rely on repeatedly extending sailors and ships to meet persistent operational demands. Our service members deserve nothing less than the full support of their government, and the American people deserve a military strategy that is worthy of the sacrifices we ask them to make. Just my opinion as a layman observer, I think Pete Hegseth is completely incompetent. Just saying.
We are the Mavericks. Welcome to the Matrix, baby. Hope you like the view. We are the Mavericks. The world is watching. We are the Mavericks.
Yeah. Now, also tonight, okay, so here we go. Trump referred to these catapults aboard the aircraft carriers before. So now tonight, in this sweeping national security directive that he signed today, Trump has ordered the U.S. Navy to abandon the advanced electromagnetic aircraft launch system on its Gerald R. Ford class aircraft carriers and go back to traditional steam-powered catapults. So the White House confirming this move today after Trump signed this national security presidential memorandum directing the change. It requires the removal of the electromagnetic launch systems currently stored on the carriers and the installation of the older steam catapult technology that was used before and for a long time on the Nimitz-class ships. Officials estimate the overhaul will cost billions of dollars again. Interestingly, I believe last month set a record for the U.S. deficit. I think just last month alone, the United States had a deficit of over $42 billion of the B in 1 month, spending more than it took in. How is that sustainable? $42 billion more than it took in. Now, you want to know why Trump has adopted this aggressive, expansionist, imperialistic foreign policy and direction? I told you a long time ago. From his perspective, the path to dealing with the United States financial troubles is to just go take stuff. That's really what it's coming down to. Expand the country, take the resources of other countries to enrich the U.S. Take it. Just go and take it. Anyway, that's what he did in Venezuela. That's why he's looking. Enough said. You've got the idea. Yeah, just call it the Don Road Doctrine. Justify it by writing something down on a piece of paper and just saying, I hereby make it so because I said so, and I'll put it on this piece of paper, and international law be damned, and this justifies anything I want to do. I can blow up boats and kidnap presidents and put in puppet regimes and assert my influence. Enough. Here we go. So anyway, Trump has repeatedly criticized those electromagnetic catapults as overly complex, unreliable, saying that they're unnecessarily expensive. Although you're going to rip those out, put the other ones in, that's going to cost billions of dollars. So he was at there was a defense summit, I guess, back in Pennsylvania last month, and he at that time declared billions of dollars more they spent on electric catapults, and they're not good. He said they're not nearly as good. Too complex. Maybe. Seems to me, though, if you've already got them installed, cost a whole lot of money to retrofit and takes those ships out of service for that longer period of time. Anyway, the directive applies to the future Ford-class ships, including the Gerald R. Ford and vessels still under construction. They've got another ship they're building, the USS Doris Miller. And Navy officials have long defended the electromagnetic catapults, saying they're precise and they reduce stress on the airframes of the jets and have higher launch rates. But Trump has argued for years that steam is simpler and more battle tested and more dependable. That's what he says. I don't know how much time he's actually served on an aircraft carrier. Probably none. Anyway, his memorandum calls for establishing a fifth public shipyard to handle submarine repairs and a new component repair center aimed at reducing maintenance backlogs. So anyway, the White House and the Navy have not provided a timeline on any of this or an exact cost estimate beyond acknowledging, of course, that this will cause multi-billions of dollars. How many multi-billions of dollars? We're not even really sure. I'm sure it'll go probably a lot like the reflecting pool at this rate. Anyway, it just marks the latest chapter in the Trump saga and his long-running push to reshape major defense programs according to his own preference for just things from the past, I guess. Do you remember during the campaign him talking about these catapult systems? I just let it kind of drift off to the side as just one of his comments, but now he's actually gone so far as to say, rip them all out and replace them with the old kind. Don't know how wise that is. My guess is we're going to get more fallout from it. Anyway. Yeah, so as I was saying, we're getting on U.S. media a lot of talk programs referencing the Canadian healthcare system. Here I'll just do a little truth or a little scroll down the X social media platform I'm sure it won't take much for this stuff to come up, especially with the prompt. And they're making a big deal out of the wait times, right? And I'm kind of like scratching my head saying, why suddenly all this focus on Canadian healthcare? It has to be, it isn't just, you just don't take a straight line look at this thing to kind of figure why they're all talking about it now at the same time. There's something else going on politically. You've got the trade deals, the trade negotiations ongoing, the 51st state rhetoric, the midterms coming up, the objectives or the reasons for focusing on this issue. Right now, I'm sure that there could be overlapping or dovetailing interests. Anyway, here's a post saying, remember, kiddies, the socialist communist line states that government healthcare is way better than private healthcare and point to Canada as a good model. At least until recently, this would be why. Now they point back to Scandinavia, blah, blah, blah. 23,746 patients died on wait lists in the past year. See, this is the thing that came up when we had one of our guests on to discuss this matter. It's these stats that are thrown around. They don't tell you the whole story. You can make statistics say kind of anything you want them to say. If you want to make them say something, you can skew the numbers or focus on certain aspects or certain numbers and not tell the whole story to paint or frame a perception of something. This is an exact case of that. It's like over 23,000 patients died on wait lists in the past year. Yeah, but what did they die from? We have wait lists in Canada for medical procedures for everything from, tennis elbow to knee replacements and hip replacements to heart surgery and brain tumors. And, you name it. Of course, how long does it take to wait? You could be on that's a gross number. When I mean gross, I mean not net, gross. It's just, that's a big number. But people on those wait lists for some procedures, you might be on a wait list, some people for days or maybe a week, could be a month, could be 6 months. Some people maybe for years. It depends. There are a lot of reasons why. Doesn't tell the whole story. And why, then the larger question even is, why did they die? So if you're just talking about a wait list, it doesn't break it down there. It doesn't say that, so many people died on a wait list, waited 6 months or waited a year. Maybe they were on a wait list, and like a wait list is a wait list. As soon as you're put on a list, you're waiting. You could be a day. It could be a week. It could be a year. It doesn't give you the breakdown. That's just one big number. And it sounds horrific because that's how many people died on wait lists. Or so it claims. You start digging into these numbers and they're not telling you the whole story. They're not really being honest. Now, Canada does have some of the longest wait times for medical procedures of any, first world country. But I'll tell you this, here in Ontario, for instance, the things have been improving. And again, these numbers don't tell the whole story because in Canada, they do prioritize who gets care first. People with the most urgent need are pushed to the front of the line. The stuff I'm hearing on a lot of these media programs, interviews, is they keep talking about the MRIs. Yeah, there was one on, maybe I can find a clip referring to it. It was a Fox News clip about MRIs saying that Canada uses 20-year-old MRIs that barely work. And you have to wait months to get in. It depends. See, I can tell you this is just me personally. This is just what I've gone through in the past year. I thought I broke my wrist a while back, right? I thought Cosmo, the super dog, broke my wrist. He yanked on me so hard a few times. And in the end, it wasn't actually broken, but they took me in and they immediately that day, after waiting in emergency for a while, I waited. So I was on a waiting list to get in, and they gave me an MRI that actually it wasn't that. That wasn't the procedure that day. I had something else that was of concern in my stomach. This was almost a year ago. That's why I'm getting confused. I got x-rays that day, though, immediately on my wrist. That's what I got. I got the MRI the same day when I went in for something else related to my stomach. And in the end, I was okay. But that was all. And I talked about it on the program that night. Now, I was actually supposed to go in for an MRI, and I was on a waiting list, and I was on the waiting list, but it wasn't urgent. It was like for a routine checkup. And so I was waiting months. So yeah, I was on a waiting list for months. But when they were concerned that there might be something serious and needing immediate care, I got an MRI within hours. So these American broadcasts criticizing the Canadian healthcare system, we have problems. There's no question. But they're ramping this stuff up, and they're not being thorough or honest about the stats, nor are a lot of the people on the, I would say, the right side of the political spectrum when they're talking about this stuff. And the reason I'm also a little softer on this stuff these days, where I've been extremely critical of the Canadian healthcare system in the past, is because here in Ontario, over the past 2 years especially, there have been absolutely major improvements in wait times, emergency room care, family doctor access. Again, me personally, for the first time in years, I actually have a family doctor. I think if I'd been more aggressive about going out and actually trying to get a family doctor, I probably could have found one. but I never was really that concerned about it because I've always been able to access care through clinics, even when I didn't have a dedicated family doctor. Issues for sure, and a lot of people still having trouble accessing family doctors, but here in this community, just in the last year, things have turned around. So I have to give credit where credit is due. I'm not just going to sit here and crap all over Canada and the healthcare system. We still have a long way to go, but I'll tell you this too. This is also kind of something else, something I've advocated for from the very beginning, and we're getting it under this conservative provincial government of Doug Ford. And I know a lot of people don't like Ford on the conservative side, and it's becoming clear to me why, and I can get to that later. But, under his government, we've seen an increase in the amount of privatization of some services, including some clinics. And that's actually one of the reasons I was able to get a family doctor, was because of the privatization of some walk-in clinics where this family doctor also practices. Wouldn't have happened had it not been for that change. So you do see this integration of private healthcare and government-run healthcare in Ontario. It can be done by provinces where they have jurisdiction over healthcare, and in spite of these claims that the federal government restricts or prohibits such activity or such integration and hybridization of the healthcare system, it is being done. A lot of the reasons why it isn't done in provinces is because people elect and choose more governments that are leaning more toward the socialized aspects of it. And a lot of people oppose privatization on any level of the healthcare system. So it isn't just because the federal government prohibits it or makes it difficult or impossible for provinces to do it by restricting the levels of transfer payments to provinces based on the concepts of healthcare universality, which is what the critics always say. It's like the federal government has so much control over the provinces that they just withhold the funds if they privatize anything at all. And that's not the case. The proof is in the pudding. It's on display right now in the provincial healthcare system in Ontario, where we have seen more privatization. But again, that's because people in Ontario voted for it. They voted for the conservative government. You're seeing that integration happening. It's introducing more efficiency and, of course, creating a business model where, you've got clinics and treatment centers opening up for a variety of procedures, including a lot of testing that previously people were waiting in line for, and you're now able to get that much faster in some Ontario communities because you have these private facilities where you can get all kinds of different tests done through privately run clinics. And I can go on and on about this. Lots of problems still. Waiting lists is still too long, but it's what the way they're characterizing it on the U.S. side, it's not really accurate. Or fair or honest. They're ramping up the fear. And I know they are because I'm listening to the rhetoric, and a lot of it is just so extreme. And it's coming from people who, honestly, I think don't really know what the hell they're actually talking about. Portrayed on these programs as experts in their fields, and they're talking to Americans about the Canadian healthcare system, and they're making statements that just are hyperbolic, over the top exaggerations, and I would go so far as to say even propagandistic. And that's, I think, largely too because as we enter into this stretch toward the midterms, the Republicans are going to be fighting, and you'll see this. You're going to see them ramping up this war on communism. They're going to use that phrase as a way to even dehumanize their political enemies. And I don't use that phrase lightly. I think that that's actually a big part of the goal, but they're going to be talking, labeling anybody that they view as a Democrat/socialist or a Democrat socialist, and they'll keep on calling them communist. They're going to throw that word around so much because it's a trigger word for so many people, especially on the right side of the political spectrum. They're going to ramp that rhetoric up. And a lot of this is, creating something of a fake boogeyman. I think we're entering a McCarthy 2.0 era with all of this. This is going to be the backbone one of the main planks of their political platform and strategy heading into the midterms. You'll see, and a lot of people will buy right into it, but I'm seeing it for what it is right now on its face as they begin this. And Canada, with all the 51st state rhetoric, they're targeting Canada as part of this and trying to, I guess, turn Canada into something of a communist boogeyman. We're not a communist country. Are we socialized? Yeah, we are. And pretty heavily in some areas, but not entirely. It's about balance, nuance. It's about accuracy. And you're not getting it in politics. You're sure as heck not. You're getting a lot of rhetoric. You're getting exaggeration. You're getting a hell of a lot of lies. And I'll be right back after this.
Maverick News isn't just a news outlet, it's a community of truth seekers. Your donation at freedomreporters.com fuels our mission to report the stories that mainstream media won't touch. Thank you, Maverick family.
Okay, so we're back and we'll get some freezing on the video system again, but hopefully they don't take us down. Speaking of healthcare, the other night on Sunday, somebody was talking about abortion and quoting not just stats, but the way that abortions are recorded in Canada. And this kind of ties into something that I actually saw about AI data centers. And it's about the legal definition of person. So I want to comment on this because the assertion was made during the broadcast on Sunday that the Canadian government or governments in Canada now record abortions, late-term abortions, as stillbirths. And when I heard that the other night, of course, I didn't say anything about it, but it stuck with me because it was bringing back memories from the 80s and the Henry Morgentaler doctor who was performing abortions at the time illegally because the laws were somewhat different in the 80s. And far more restrictive on abortions, and it became a huge issue. I'm old enough to remember this stuff. Some of it's kind of foggy for me, but when the statement was made, I was like, maybe I have to. I couldn't comment, and I just let it go anyway because it wasn't a debate the other night; it was just a discussion. And this was the claim that was made. It's accurate that in Canada, late-term abortions, we're talking like 20 weeks plus abortions, are recorded as stillbirths. Of course, the framing was such that it left us all with the impression that the government has been hiding or trying to hide the number of abortions by classifying them as stillbirths. And that isn't really quite the whole story again. The reason I bring it up is because accuracy is important. And if you want to, it's not about my position on abortion. I haven't even stated my position on abortion. So stop it. Okay, stop. I'm just bringing you the information to help you frame this properly so you can make your own decision and assess this and form your own opinion on this. All right. The point is that the government has never really tried to hide the number of abortions. Then the reason I say that is two things can be true at the same time. Or in this case, not all the information was provided. The forms are filled out where the doctor performing the abortion does fill it out saying that it was a stillbirth. But he's not doing that, or she isn't doing that to hide the fact that it was an abortion. The reason it is done is because it's a legal thing. And this is important. On those forms, there's also an indicator. They also indicate on there that the stillbirth, the reason for the stillbirth was that it was induced. So it has both pieces of information on it. There's a record of it having been an induced stillbirth, which is an abortion. And that's how they're also able to track the numbers and why it happens. Sometimes stillbirths happen that are not induced, in which case it's marked that way on the forms. But of course, people trying to make a political point or frame it in a particular political way will say what was said the other night. And I think a lot of the people who are conveying that information as a talking point politically are probably not even aware of what I just told you. Now, why is that done? This is why I was thinking about the Morgentaler stuff from the 1980s. Henry Morgentaler, abortion doctor. This is just from my memory, okay? So if I get any of the details maybe a little bit off, I apologize. And so the exact dates and things, I'm not going to try to quote that stuff, but we're talking mid to late 80s. This was an ongoing issue. It went on and on and on for a long time. I remember the issue when I was in high school, being front and center in the media. Morgentaler really challenging the Canadian government. It became a point of political activism. He was an abortion activist doctor, and he was performing these abortions, and he kept pushing it, and the government was taking note of it, but he wasn't really being convicted on this stuff. And there were protests and debates, and just opened the whole discussion because this was the doctor taking the lead. And then he pushed it so far that he did end up being arrested. There were long ongoing court cases that, went to the highest courts in the land. And it resulted in something very important that relates to what I was just talking about. The definition of what a person is, the legal definition. And because of the Morgentaler case, and it's not exclusive to this, but this wove its way into all of it. It's like, is a fetus a person? And the courts at the time decided that a fetus is not a person, that a human being is not a person until it is born and is living outside the womb. And if I'm getting the legal jargon or the legal nuance in all of this, not exactly correct, I apologize. It is just from memory, but it's a human being, not a person legally until it's born and is living outside the womb. And because of that decision, and then subsequent decisions through the court systems afterward, which challenged that, and there were refinements and the legal precedents set. But because of that legal distinction and decision, Canada's abortion laws basically went out the window. Before that, Canada, much more restrictive abortion laws. Today, our abortion laws, informed really largely by this Henry Morgentaler legal battle that framed the future that we're living in now with regard to abortions. And so when it's said that the forms are filled out as a stillbirth, that's because the fetus that was aborted did not have legal rights. And it was therefore classified as a stillbirth. And when the fetus came out, it was not a person, didn't have legal rights. That's why it gets that classification on the form. But to make sure that it was recorded accurately, it is also indicated on there that the stillbirth was induced. That's what's going on with all of that. It's not an attempt, it then becomes somewhat conspiratorial, framing the government as being, in some sort of a conspiracy to hide what they're doing in a, because they're part of a death cult, and that the government's, enforcing a death culture. That's the narrative on that side. You can adopt that if you choose to, but they're not hiding it. All of that information is available and is included in all the stats. So you get both things. Stillbirth, yes, but it's induced. It's an abortion, and those numbers are recorded. But it brings up the whole bigger issue of what a person is. And the reason I came back to it tonight was not so much just because of the discussion that we had on the weekend. It's because of what I've heard about what was going on in Argentina with this push to put in a new law, which will give AI, artificial intelligence agents, legal status, where entire corporations, which are set up by human beings, but being run by AI agents, the AI agents could be, and I think are being given in Argentina for the first time in history, legal status as persons. So because of that, if that kind of legal framing is carried forward into other countries, if that happens here, for instance, and it's certainly happening there, now suddenly, if that happened in Canada, for instance, an AI agent, a completely fake synthetic entity, which is just digital bits and bytes, would have actual legal rights where a fetus would not, does not in Canada, if it comes down to that. And that's because an AI agent because it's powered by artificial intelligence, can have discussions, it can perform tasks unilaterally and even make decisions to run entire companies. Agents, a series of them as corporations, can function 24/7, 365, while the humans that own them sleep. Or then maybe if they're given legal rights and legal status, then maybe those AI agents then maybe have the right to wages. This opens a whole legal Pandora's box. And I find it very alarming that we are on the cusp of granting rights to something that doesn't even really actually exist in our reality, except that it's kind of in that trapped matrix reality of the cloud and these AI data centers. These are synthetic entities created by humans, but functioning on their own. And we elevate them potentially legally to give them the same status as human beings. And if they're given that status, imagine the legal complexities and ethics that roll out of that evolve from that. What happens if an AI agent has person status and you want to turn the power off, unplug it? Are you killing something? Is it alive at that point? Does the government, do the courts then consider an AI agent as being a living entity if it has rights? Are you allowed to turn it off? Are you doing harm to something that is in some way maybe even considered to be conscious? And it just because they give it rights doesn't mean that it's actually a living thing. It's just given that legal status. Maybe simply for capitalistic reasons, maybe because of reasons of greed. I don't know where all of this is going to go. Nobody really does. But I think we need to kind of tap the brakes on this stuff. This is why I'm so concerned about what I'm seeing, even through the media. And this past week, what have I seen? You know, this is an interesting thing, too. I've seen Rebel News, Ezra Levant, really carrying water for the AI industry and then by extension, the energy industry, pushing AI centers, data centers, defending them, promoting them, saying people shouldn't be afraid of them, and exploring the issue while really trying to appease concerns from people who largely would, you know, traditionally be a part of that media outlet's base following. But you're seeing rising concerns, not just among them, but all people. And why is that happening? Well, you can see that, you know, the energy industry is deeply invested in this and stands to gain so much by these AI data centers. And that's, you know, why they clearly have their own PR campaigns ongoing. They're deeply engaged in the info war. And you're seeing through that map, through the Aaron Brockovich data center map that I put up, all those red dots, the United States just littered with red dots, each one representing on that map of the United States, an AI data center that is under construction or being planned. And here in Canada and in the United States, certainly the AI industry, the tech bros, the social media companies, the digital enterprises that are fueling and powering all of this, they're going after government. Certainly doing what they can to get Donald Trump, for instance, to just throw caution to the wind and not regulate them. They want a deregulated industry, no regulations if possible. And that's why you're seeing in community after community that there are no environmental assessments required, that there are often cases, more often than not, cases of entire communities waking up one morning to find out that an entire massive data center has been approved in their community and there's been no community input whatsoever, because there's this mad dash, this AI data race that is ongoing right now as governments seek to build these things at a rapid pace because they see it as an existential threat to their governance, to national security, because it's not just about, as you know, the politicians have been telling people out in Alberta, Danielle Smith saying, well, don't you use Facebook? Do you ever go on social media? Do you do you surf the net? Do you scroll down Facebook? Well, it's all coming from a data center. Yeah, but those data centers do far more than that. It's part of the military industrial complex. And what exactly are they being used for? I can't help but feel that in many ways, these data centers are not actually there. That in the end, they won't just be producing things. I think that in many respects, they're going to become all consuming. And I think that's undeniable at this point, because each one of these things will be soaking up as much energy as an entire city, a major city. Now, the water is a secondary concern compared to, I think it's in some cases, to the massive amounts of energy that are going to be required to power these things. And a lot of these will be powered by modular nuclear reactors, small nuclear reactors on site. And if not that, then they're just going to be sucking up massive amounts of natural gas, oil. And then we're being told, don't worry about that. It won't affect your power bill because these data centers will have their own power generation plants on site. But it sure as hell will affect our power bills, even if they build those power generation facilities on site. If they have their own generators, they're still going to be sucking up the natural gas. They're still going to need to produce the power somehow. That increases demand for power. That increases demand for natural gas, demand for oil. And if there's increased demand, that means that on the markets, the price of oil will increase. The price of natural gas will increase. Even if they're producing the electricity on site, they're still pulling the natural gas and the oil from the pipelines, from the same supply that is used to send to refineries, which we then use to heat our homes, power our cars, live our daily lives. It's absolutely going to have an impact on the price of energy. That means the price of the pump will go up. That means the price for your heating bill will go up. That means the price of electricity will go up. The only way to stabilize that is to increase production output of the raw product. But I mean, we'll get to a price point that will, find the intersection between supply and demand, of course, over time, but it's going to be very disruptive. And if they don't increase the supply enough, then the prices are going to spike. And this is all happening at a breakneck speed right now. Trump has this problem in the Middle East, the Strait of Hormuz, causing prices to go up and down like a yo-yo, mostly up, certainly more than double what they were before his little excursion. This is far from over, man, and it's so politicized. And that's why I highlight the, some media outlets going out even to Alberta to do these reports that, to me, just smack of some sort of influence. Certainly not unbiased reporting. I mean, here we go again with them. Beware what you believe. You're in an information vacuum, an ecosphere, a little bubble. Oh, yeah, you are. We're all being fed the information and being isolated so that we're not hearing any other side of the story. Oh, yes. Those oil companies, man, they are so powerful. Just another layer to the whole Alberta separatism issue, breaking up Canada, Trump going after every country that is oil rich. Oh, yeah, you just look down the list. Who has he been targeting? All these countries. All of them have something to do with oil on some level. They want the oil. He wants the oil. Yeah. Because they're trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions in debt. But he can't find a way out of Iran. The trap that he set for himself. Tucker Carlson ties into this to some degree. Let's bring this up because this is the guy who went to Alberta, spoke at a pro 51st Stater separatist UCP conservative rally out in Alberta land. And on his way into the country, into Canada, he called the Prime Minister's office and said that he was on his way to Canada to liberate us. And then I want you to listen to this. I came across this with Joe last night. And this clip here, it just for me highlighted the hypocrisy. Listen.
I just showed a picture of you with Joe Cat and Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene in your home. Great picture, by the way. Everybody looks happy, and it looks like you're having a conversation over a meal, which is, a pretty cool thing. What's the meaning behind this? Is Candace on to something here? Or are you thinking about creating something?
Well, I'm not planning to run for president, that's for sure. But those are people, Marjorie, Joe, Thomas Massey. I mean, those are three people who I think understand the moment we're in. And the moment we're in is pretty simple. I think a lot of Americans have realized that the Democratic and the Republican Party agree with each other on the biggest issues, that is the economy and foreign policy, and highlight their minor differences in order to hide that fact from the rest of us. And moreover, that actually the big decisions of the U.S. government are not made by elected officials. They're made by the permanent bureaucracy, the deep state. That's a fact. I've watched it. So that's not democracy. That's not. And by the way, they're not doing a good job. It'd be one thing if you had a non-democratic system. There are plenty of them in the world. There are lots of monarchies that are run pretty well.
Yeah.
You would say, well, okay, it's not a democracy, but at least it works. We have the worst of all systems. It's not a democracy and it doesn't work. And so clearly we need an alternative, and I have no idea what that will be, but there will be an alternative because this is not acceptable.
Yeah, not acceptable, not working for people. Why did I run the clip? This is the guy who said that he needed to come to Canada to liberate us. He's been backing the whole 51st state narrative, the rhetoric. Not joking. It's clearly not a joke. He's been part of the whole thing. Then he sits there and talks about the US system and says it's not working for anybody and it's unacceptable. So what the hell was that guy? What the hell is he going to liberate Canada from so we can become part of a system that is unacceptable? And he says there's going to be something. He doesn't even have a solution. That's the other thing with a lot of these folks who want to burn it all down. They're going to burn it all down. Or they say it's not fixable, but they don't have a clue what they're really going to replace it with. They don't really have a plan. They've been talking about forming, another political party to go after the presidency and to challenge the Democrats and Republicans. People have been trying to do that for a long time, and people, trying to build up Tucker Carlson as a presidential candidate. That's been going on for months. Do you think he's going to run? I think he is seriously contemplating it. The first thing you do when you're going to run for political office is when people ask you about it, you deny it. And then the more you deny it, the more then you do it. That's the way the game works. So it's a trial balloon. They're putting it out there to create the idea, put the idea in people's heads that maybe Tucker Carlson could run for president. They're doing it right now with Hunter Biden too. That's why he's on the talk show circuit. And that's also why he started to post on social media and why that started to get real traction. That was being promoted. So there's a guy, a tax evader. I mean, you see what his lifestyle was. He's made a lot of really bad choices in life, even though he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, like so many from the elite families, right? And now people are actually talking about Hunter Biden possibly running for president. They're actually talking about testicle tanning Tucker Carlson. Oh yeah, you look it up. He likes to do that. They're actually talking about maybe having him run for president. And he doesn't even know what he would replace those other parties with yet. And even when I listen to other people talk about these political alternatives that they apparently have, every one of them falls apart. Our system of governance here in Canada, I'll just talk about Canada for just very briefly for a moment. We have problems, and it's got some serious flaws that need to still be addressed, especially after the pandemic. No question about that. And that's why, I guess the Allison inquiry with regard to the vaccines is moving ahead again. Concerns about that and all of that stuff needs to be addressed still. And that's an extension of what we saw with the National Citizens Inquiry into the pandemic and the vaccines afterward. I was going to run some clips from the news conference from that today, but there will be plenty of opportunity to address all of that in the weeks ahead. And there's a lot of politics surrounding that stuff too. That's not all squeaky clean either. But the point that I'm kind of making here is the people coming out with these alternative political systems that they say that they would use to replace our current system of government. When you start to break them down and analyze them, they tend to fall apart before they even get going. And as much as we do have some problems with our system, it's because the system has problems that it works. What do I mean by that? I mean that it's democracy. And democracy is messy. And you don't always get what you want. That's why it takes sometimes multiple elections to kind of hit the sweet spot. People vote for things and then they become disenchanted, even when things were really good at times. The economy was humming along and people were pretty much carefree. I remember periods of time like that when things were pretty sweet. And then, of course, people just get disgruntled, or they'd start to listen to the opposing political parties who would ramp up rhetoric about, problems with this or problems with that. And you get focused on the negative, and then you sometimes end up sweeping away the good things without realizing what you're actually doing. And then you miss what you had, right? And I think, as I've said before, we took it for granted before the pandemic, what we had. We took it for granted for a very long, long, long time. And that's why they were able to take it away from us. We took it for granted, and we didn't continue building the guardrails to make sure that the guardrails are put in place properly in order to protect our rights. But the system is still there. The bones are still there. The structure, the foundation, it can still be built upon. And it largely does work. It's largely dysfunctional, but that's because it's democracy and you get people with different interests voting in different ways. But that means we don't have to go to war with each other, and we all get a say to one degree or another. And you might say, well, it doesn't matter, Rick, because it doesn't matter how I vote. We never get what we want. And those people out in Alberta complaining all the time that they don't have a big enough voice. And those are all things that can be worked out over time through the democratic process, because those steps are there. And you say that you can't do that, and that's a lie. People telling you that you can't, they're lying to you, because quite clearly you can affect incredible levels of change in this country, up to and including breaking it apart. And how many countries actually have systems that would allow people to go that far without throwing them right in the slammer? Not that many. But Canada does, because Canada is maybe tolerant to a fault. But man, we can change things. The mechanisms are there. The systems are there. The political party system is there. And if you think that that can't change, think again, because the Conservative Party has gone through several transformations just in the past few decades. Progressive Conservative Party, Reform, Combining, Unite the Right, Conservative Alliance, Conservative Party of Canada now. The CPC is not the Conservative Party that was in place during the Pierre Trudeau era in the 70s, or the 80s. It's certainly even, I would say, different than what we had under Brian Mulroney. These things can and do change, and sometimes very slowly and then right away. So do not lose hope is the point. You have more power than you think. We all do. We all have a lot more say. That's why they spend literally billions and gabillions and billions of dollars on campaigns and advertising, political marketing, all of it to influence you, because your voice and your vote matter. Here's Doug Ford talking about these AI centers, AI data centers rather. And he is concerned about, I think that we need to slow down a little bit, but it's hard to do that when everybody's rushing to build them in various countries. And if you don't keep up, then you fall behind. And oh my God, here's Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, addressing the issue today.
Ontario has a choice. We can build the economy of the future and ensure Canadians' data remains in Canada and out of President Trump's hands, or we can get left behind and risk Canadians' data being sent down to the U.S., where only President Trump, God knows what he will do with it. I don't trust that guy as far as I can throw him. That's why today I'm announcing Ontario is launching the framework for our data center playbook. We want to have sovereign data. We don't want to rely on President Trump getting his paws all over it. We want to focus on our data. Either we do it or Donald Trump's going to do it. And I'm not giving Donald Trump nothing, absolutely nothing. Ontario has
It's an emergency. Build, build, build. No time to think about it. Are you feared enough yet? Just get her done. No permit required. Regulation free. Yeah, I hear that. I've heard that. I'm all for minimal government, but I'm not for no government. And with something like this, I think we need very sober thought before we go too far, because these things, as I say, they're not just going to be producing, they're going to be consuming. And I'm worried that maybe they'll consume more than just energy. They might consume us. They might consume our minds. He's talking about Canadian influence. This is, there's so many issues surrounding all of this. This is a whole about like what's Canadian content? What is foreign influence over our elections? What is foreign influence over our economy? And that influence can easily flow over the border anyway through these data centers, regardless of where they're located physically. That data is going to be flowing back and forth across the border. How much can we regulate that? How much are we going to be allowed to? Right now, you're seeing that Trump is putting pressure on the Canadian government, even through these trade talks, to make sure that the Canadian government doesn't regulate or tax in any way these big tech companies. Why is that? Because they want to influence our politics, because they want the ability to reach into Canada with social media, with legacy media, in order to bend your mind. We ran that mockumentary on the weekend about the Canadian conspiracy, going down to all these celebrities in the United States who are actually Canadians: William Shatner, Lorne Greene, Martin Short, and now what wasn't in the mockumentary, but Mike Myers. The list goes on. A lot of Canadians in the film and television industry, celebrities down there. And as I said, in this post-truth reality that we're living in, this post-Trump truth reality, you watch that today and you can look at it and go, yeah, you know what? There's probably something to that. And you can accept that as maybe something as a true conspiracy, where the mockumentary pretty well points out that it's a joke, but there is heavy Canadian influence down there. These things, these conspiracies tend to take on a life of their own, but maybe there is a grain of truth in a lot of this stuff. Canadians down there shaping American attitudes by having Canadians work in media and inject their political attitudes, disposition into the media information ecosystem. The information war has been raging even before the days of the internet. With the internet now, though, it just gets ramped up into something completely different. And it's not just the information war. It's about, what does it mean to be a person, right? What does it mean if we enter this new era of transhumanism? What if we enter, well, we're already there, an era of robots. We were joking about that the other night, right? The fembots, the $6 Million Man. Maybe that was predictive programming back in the 1970s. $6 Million Man, Bionic Woman. Those are really the first television shows that portrayed like half human, half robot superheroes at the time. And then you get, you fast forward a few years into the 80s and the 90s, and you get into the Terminator movies. Again, predictive programming, maybe because we're seeing exactly that in Ukraine and in the war with Iran, especially in Ukraine. Massive drone warfare. CENTCOM tonight entering into some sort of a new multinational drone agreement. So there's news about that as well. This is a race toward drone warfare. Make no mistake, these AI data centers, that's all about that stuff too. That's about military applications. That's about providing guidance and information to military drones, from military purposes And those are the other questions that I think people in AI data center communities and all of us need to be asking is, what are these data centers really being used for? Canada always has been very concerned about even allowing nuclear weapons onto Canadian soil. We don't have them now, but we have in the past with the Beaumark missiles. That was a really controversial thing back in its day. And then there was the cruise missile testing that took place over Canada when that technology was when those weapons were being developed. I remember going out to protests covering that as a journalist, where they had the cruise catcher. It was like a big net connected to balloons. It was just a visual spectacle designed to create a photo op for the media in order to highlight the issue at the time. But it was a real issue. And now with this is maybe bigger than the nuclear issue, because it's the nuclear issue on steroids. It's about nuclear weapons. It's about drones. It's about AI technology being used to develop military strategy and to even not potentially, they've got the technology now to predict the future using artificial intelligence, meaning that with this technology, they can predict where troop deployments will be from the enemy before they get there. How powerful is that? Not only, and then, you've got the financial applications and who has access to the data first. And you're seeing all of that playing out right now with Truth Social and Trump and his family selling access to Truth Social posts that he's putting up as president to people on Wall Street for $100,000 a year, getting it just seconds before anybody else, so they can use AI to then have the AI decide how to buy and sell stocks and commodities and various financial products in order to profit in ways that other people just simply can't, because it rigs the system. Access to the technology, access to the information. Those are other key issues that need to be raised. And there are a ton of other ethical, moral, legal, technological issues that I'm not even thinking of here tonight. And I'm sure that the people in charge aren't thinking of it either. And you want to talk about transhumanism, you want to talk about robots. Well, let's talk about Jamie Franklin, Robot Girl. She now speaks. That's right. This is the girl that was in the Oval Office behind President Trump when he was signing the executive order reducing the number of recommended vaccines for children from 72 to, 11 or, I think it was 11 or 12, maybe a dozen, maybe 13, whatever the number is. These recommended vaccines for kids. Anyway, he's sitting there. Well, here's her social media account on X. Now, you may recall that she was there and standing behind Trump, and she looked a little bit, well, shall we say, stiff. Got my attention. I was like, what's with that girl? She looks kind of weird. Well, that went viral. So I'm just going to scroll down here, because as a result of that, she has now appeared on a podcast addressing this, because, of course, memes went viral where here she is, and you can see this. She's looking like a robot, nodding her head. There it is there. And she posted she says, I was so honored to join President Trump in the Oval Office today for the signing of an executive order recognizing gold standard childhood vaccine recommendation. Yeah. This is an important step toward maximizing parental choice and aligning childhood immunization recommendations with scientific evidence and best practices from peer-developed countries. As a mom, I care deeply about the health of our nation. She just goes on. It was so good to be there with President Trump for this. She's a political activist. She has this political organization for young women, conservative women, that she's involved with. In any event, she appears on this podcast here. So I thought I'd give her a voice because we like to give people a voice here at Maverick News. And I was laughing because they were funny, these memes. And I'm glad to say, and I'm relieved to see that she was not upset about this. She too found humor in it. So good for her, taking it in stride. And here I give Jamie a voice tonight.
I have such a thick skin and I'm like not someone that takes myself too seriously. So my husband and I have been like sitting in bed watching them and we're like, some of them are really funny. I will not lie. Like we've been like laughing so hard and I never respond to things. I responded to that one because I just thought it was so ridiculous and funny. And it was, it actually just went viral, my response. I'm like, I'm just pregnant, you weirdos. Like what's wrong with you guys? But I almost never respond to hate comments because I'm like, I'm not getting in the mud with these losers. Like,
it really feels like the greatest act of revenge against these people is being normal and happy.
Exactly. Just ignoring them and letting, they're miserable. If they're spending their time, you're living rent free, right? I always say that. And I think the president is the best at this. He doesn't care if it's positive or negative coverage. He owns the news cycle. So when you're trending and people are, throwing hate your way and talking badly about you, you're winning at the end of the day. And I'm like, I'll just keep driving that engagement up. I have such a thick skin and I'm like.
So I guess she's pregnant. I didn't know that. I still don't feel bad about laughing because it was funny. Oh, there she is too with Caroline Leavitt. Caroline Leavitt leaving at the end of the month as press secretary, by the way. We mentioned that the other night. Gee, I wonder if that's because, was she riding on the death plane with the rest of the media and now she's decided to bail because she has 2 babies and including a newborn at home? I don't know why. And I don't know if the death plane issue, anything about it. Anyway, what I will say is, it's a weird time. And this whole thing with this young lady, it was weird. She looked weird. The president looks weird. Why does the president look weird? Because he's freaking falling asleep during the whole thing. So you've got Robot Girl in the background getting all the attention and Trump falling asleep in his chair in the Oval Office during this news conference where he's signing this executive order. And I'm not making it up.
Actually, more than a year ago, where we funded a dozen and more
he's sleeping
research teams to answer the question.
And she's a robot.
The cause of autism.
The sleeping president and Robot Girl.
It's not going to be a simple answer. It will have, actually more than a year ago, where we funded a dozen.
You can't make this stuff up.
Major research teams to answer the question of what is the cause of autism.
It's not just a show. This is like a science fiction horror flick. Welcome to the future, baby. Welcome to the future. Oh, my. Well, folks, with that, I guess I'll wrap it up for tonight. And I'll be back tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side.
Welcome to the Matrix. All night, chasing the high. Everything's fake, psychedelic sky. They said you're free, that's the game. Different screen, always the same. You are what you believe, that's the key. Lock your mind, lose reality. If you believe it, it comes alive. Truth gets buried, nobody survives. The world is watching, brains are washing. Living the lie, glazed over eyes, hypnotized. Living the lie, no way to hide, truth inside the crowd. Think you're awake, it's in your head. Different cage, dream is dead. The world is watching. Brains are washing. Living the lie. Glazed over eyes, hypnotized, zombified. Living the lie. No way to hide, truth denied. Switch it off, take back your mind. Living the lie. Break it down, shut it out, turn it off right now. Break the screen, cut the feed, take back what you need. Living the lie, glazed over eyes, hypnotized, zombified. Living the lie, too tired to fight. Wake up now, take it back tonight. Living the lie. Living the lie. No more. Exit the matrix.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.